How many of you have heard of the law of circulation? Most of you have heard of the law of circulation. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? You know, many things circulate. Lots and lots of things circulate, in fact. Fans circulate air. Our hearts circulate blood. You know, so many things circulate, like ideas, and people circulate. So many things depend upon circulation. And I have found that as I thought about this, that, you know, what if the heart decided to keep the blood? Didn't let it circulate. What would happen? Not much, would it? Something very drastic, I'm afraid. What would happen if ideas didn't circulate? What would happen to creativity if we did not have ideas that circulated? What would happen if all of those things that we think of and know about in life did not circulate? If they just didn't move? You know, what if stuff didn't circulate? I don't know about you, but if stuff didn't circulate in and out of my house, particularly if it didn't circulate out, things would get pretty bad in my house. So there are things that we need to look at in our own lives. What if our beliefs don't circulate? What if we come upon something that is a much better belief than we have held, and we say, oh, no, thank you. I'm going to keep my old belief. It hasn't worked so far, but maybe if I keep doing it, it will. Have you ever had a belief like that? That you just hung on to no matter what? I know that I have seen people who did stick with those old beliefs even though they really wanted to let them go. They were so deeply ingrained, they simply could not do it. In Luke 6:38, Jesus says, "Give and it will be given to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over will be put into your lap, for the measure you give will be the measure you get back." You know, there are things in our lives that we give and receive. And giving and receiving is an important part of our life. I'm going to tell you a story about Jim. One evening, Jim was parked outside at the mall, and he had just gotten his car washed, and he was waiting for his wife to get off work. And as he was wiping down his car, he noticed that coming across the parking lot was what society would consider a bum. And it was one of those times when, you know, that you have those times when you feel generous, but there are other times when you just don't want to be bothered. And this was one of those don't want to be bothered times for Jim. And I'll continue this story in Jim's words. Jim's a real person, by the way. He wrote this story. And he said, "I hope he doesn't ask me for money," I thought. He didn't. He came and he sat on the curb in front of the bus stop. And he didn't look like he even had enough money for a bus. And after a few moments, he spoke. "That's a nice car," he said. He was ragged, but he had an air of dignity about him. I acknowledged his comment and continued wiping down my car. He sat there quietly as I worked, and the expected plea for money never came. And as the silence between us widened, something inside said, "Ask him if he needs any help." I was sure he would say yes, but I held true to my inner voice. "Do you need any help?" I asked. He answered in 3 simple words, but profound words that I shall never forget. We often look for wisdom in great men and women, but from a person like this, we expect nothing but an outstretched, grimy hand. And he spoke 3 words that shook me. Don't we all, he said. I needed help. Maybe not for bus fare or place to sleep, but I needed help. I reached in my wallet and I gave him not only enough for bus fare, but enough to get a warm meal and shelter for the night. Those 3 little words still ring true. No matter how much we have, no matter how much we have accomplished, we need help too. No matter how little you have, no matter how loaded you are with problems, even without money or a place to sleep, you can give help. Even if it's just a compliment, you can give that. You never know when you may see someone that appears to have it all, but they are waiting for you to give them what they don't have. A different perspective on life. A glimpse at something beautiful. In spite of daily chaos that only you through a torn world can see. Maybe the man was just a homeless stranger wandering the streets. Maybe he was more than that. Maybe he was sent by a power that is great and wise to minister to a soul too comfortable in themselves. Maybe someone called for an angel, dressed him like a bum, then said, go minister to that man cleaning the car. That man needs help. Don't we all? It's the law of circulation that keeps things moving. The law of circulation is what keeps our lives more exciting, gives us hope for the morrow. It is the thing that creates a wonder in our lives. You know, it just begins so often that in our human consciousness, though, that supply is progressive. We think that we have to go through a series of going from here to there to get to our supply. And that is not the case. That is not the case. So often, when the human mind cannot see its way completely through a problem, it is tempted not to act upon even that which it sees in front of us. Have you ever had that happen? You were so paralyzed because you couldn't see how to make the whole scenario you had in mind happen, that you simply were paralyzed and you didn't act on even the thing that you knew was going to get you there eventually, but you were frozen. And you're tempted not to act at all. But you know, it just begins with a thought. A thought is where it all begins. Anything that you see in the world began with a thought. Just a thought. It's that creation that was done twice in Genesis. And the first was a thought. Let's say you want enlightenment. Do you believe you already have it? I don't know. Perhaps. Perhaps you do. I just skipped a page. So I'm going to go back to that. So when we often delay in doing anything at all, we get stopped in our tracks. But I want to tell you about a man that did not happen to. I'm going to tell you about this gentleman that during the Depression lost everything. And he was very wealthy, very, very wealthy man. And he lost it all. And he was in shock. He was literally in shock. And he walked around in shock and he said, I know there's a way out of this. I know there's a way. And he would repeat that over and over to himself. I know there's a way out of this. I know there's a way. He'd even wake up in the night thinking, I know there's a way out of this. I know there is. And one morning he picked up the newspaper and he started to read. And he noticed an article about millions of pounds of coffee in Brazil. And nobody there wanted it. They had plenty of coffee. And he thought about that for a moment, and he thought, you know, we want coffee here, but we don't have any money to buy coffee. So then he thought, but we have millions of bushels of American wheat. And what if I could get the two together and make a trade? And so he made a couple of phone calls, and before you know it, he was started on his way back to his fortune. He knew. He just knew there was a way. He just knew it. You know, the law of circulation keeps us in a consciousness of supply. And you know, I want to turn to another one of Jesus' teachings in Matthew 13:12, where he says, for those who have more will be given. They will be given abundance. But those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. So, since this is really such a harsh statement, we're going to look at it metaphysically again and say it from the way that I think it was meant. For those who have a consciousness of supply, more will be given. They will have abundance. But those who have nothing and do not have a consciousness of supply, even what they have will be taken away. The man in our story had a consciousness of supply. Let's look at our own lives. Do we have a consciousness of supply? Do we know that the answer to our problem is already here, or do we just know that everything is hopeless? Often that's where we get stuck. We get stuck in a place where we think, well, it's just hopeless. It's just hopeless. And I'll never have the things I want. And I will never be able to do the things I want because. And you know what? We can always make a good case for that, can't we? We can always make a good case for why something's not going to work out. We can always make a case for it. If we look hard enough, we'll find lots of reasons. The thing is, we have to know that there's a way. We have to know that there is a way, because there always is. As Stan used to say, there's a path through everything. And there always was. There always was a path through everything. Where does the demonstration of prosperity begin? It begins in our own consciousness. If we are not building our consciousness now, when are we going to do that? When are we going to change our minds and see things from a more positive perspective? When are we going to know for ourselves that God is big enough to handle any challenge? Do you believe that? What do you wish for your life? What success do you desire? Is your consciousness big enough to encompass and comprehend the power you have? Can you consciously believe this is who you are?